All right. What's up, everyone? What a brutal last 24 hours for New York sports. Us fans have suffered enough. And what we witnessed yesterday, hold on. My gain has been too high lately. I have no idea where this is going. Oh, it's been way too high. I'm still, and you can tell by the title, and I'm going to get into it. I want to start chronologically, so I'm going to start with the Giants and then get to the Yankees. Obviously, the latter, I'm much more upset about it, angry, considering the expectations, considering the stakes being in the playoffs. The Giants, on the other hand, should have won that game against the Saints. But either way, the general sentiment following yesterday was like pure depression. I have not felt like that as a sports fan in a very, very long time, because it wasn't just the one team. It wasn't like the Giants, the disappointment that we faced from them on a daily basis throughout the last 10 years. But the Yankees compounded the issue by playing one of the worst games, and this isn't just that game, the game before as well, playing one of the worst stretches of baseball that I've ever seen in my entire life. And the series isn't over. It basically is. Whether you think it is totally over or not is your prerogative. I think it is, unsurprisingly. But what we witnessed yesterday and the day before, the first time in Yankees postseason history, I don't know the exact stats. They made the postseason 50-plus times. I could name that off the top of my head. It's the first time in Yankees postseason history in which they allowed 10-plus runs in back-to-back games. Absolute disaster. But let's start with the Giants and what we witnessed yesterday against the Saints in one of the most winnable games that I've seen the Giants lose in just a few weeks. Maybe last year there were a multitude of those games, the Commanders game earlier on in the year where they didn't have a kicker. I could go on and on. This is just another example of the incompetence throughout the Brian Daboll era. And it isn't just exclusive to him. This goes back years and years with the Giants. Whether it be Pat Shurmur, McAdoo, the list goes on and on with the last few head coaches since they fired Tom Coughlin. It has been constant. And yesterday was just another example. The Giants turned the ball over 5 straight times to end the game. 6 if you count that last drive in which they had a turnover on downs. Technically it was a turnover, but 5 straight turnovers before that turnover on downs. I could not, and there was a clip that circulated out there from Mike Francesa. This is the first time this has happened to an NFL team in 9 years. The last time it happened was to the Jets, which I think is pretty hilarious and pretty fitting considering the state of New York football. But with the Giants, it is more of the same. It is what we've witnessed time and time again. And there are a multitude of blames to go around. We can assign blame to the coaching staff. We can assign blame to the front office for not putting together a better receiving corps besides Malik Neighbors. There are a bunch of people that we could go around and blame. But what happened yesterday was the result of some awful plays from Darius Slayton. It's not just the one reason, but Darius Slayton is the worst number 1 wide receiver in football. That's not hyperbole. You look around, I don't even think it's close. The guy sucks. And being in his 6th or 7th year in the NFL and still doing that, I mean, the fumble was just unbelievable. Like it wasn't just that, he has issues creating separation. He did get open on that deep ball that Jackson Dart underthrew. He came back. Should have probably caught that. A better receiver. Malik Neighbors catches that. That isn't saying much considering the fact that Malik Neighbors is a top 3 receiver in the NFL. But Darius Slayton has to be better. The Giants gave this guy $36 million. $36 million United States dollars. That is the worst signing of this past offseason, not just from Joe Schoen, but every other GM in football. That's the guy the Giants gave $12 million a year to. They didn't want to pay Xavier McKinney. They didn't want to pay Saquon Barkley. That's another story for another day. They made the right decision on that, But still, the question remains of why wouldn't you dedicate that money towards your two best players and dedicate it to a guy who probably wouldn't even be a wide receiver 3 on the majority of the teams in the NFL? The fact that the Giants trusted a guy like that underlines the issues that we've seen from the Giants over the years. The questionable front office decisions, the questionable coaching. That's just undisciplined football yesterday. A disciplined team doesn't turn the ball over 5 straight times. And albeit the 2 interceptions from Jackson Dart aren't that big of a deal, I'm not going to sit here and ridicule him. I will ridicule him on the fumble. It is the first time that I've ever seen a player in the NFL fumble the ball without getting touched. Besides what people do, and we saw this from DeMarcado yesterday, like when are these guys going to learn their lesson? With having these long-ass touchdowns, they go untouched the last 20 to 30 yards, and instead of just taking the ball and getting over the end zone, over the goal line, they dropped the ball. And we saw that yesterday. So that is the one example, and obviously that's happened a multitude of times, not just in the NFL, but college football happens probably in high school all the time. But it's the first time that I can think of a player fumbling the ball like that. Not idiotically at the goal line. So I guess there's a little consolation prize in that fact that it didn't cost the Giants 7 points, but it killed a drive in which the Giants were moving the ball down the field. And that was the issue with the 3 fumbles yesterday. That every single one of those fumbles happened on a drive when the Giants were moving the ball, when they looked extremely good. The Scadaboo turnover, the Scadaboo fumble. And I'm not as concerned with Scadaboo. You saw his reaction when he went to the bench. You saw what he tweeted yesterday. If you missed that, pretty encouraging. It's a stand-up move. Respect. He's a rookie. He's allowed to fumble every once in a while. I'm not concerned about that. But that fumble was a 12 to 14-point swing. Putting it bluntly, it changed the game. It lost the Giants the game. All the other things could have happened. And the 2 Dart interceptions would not have happened in that spot if they were up going into the fourth quarter, late on in the fourth quarter. Their play calling is different. They run the ball a lot more. But the Scadaboo turnover lost them the game. And then 4 of the turnovers. Like that doesn't help you. Obviously, the Slayton turnover, I think he should start spending more time focusing on how to be a better football player than tweeting at Giants content creators. That is not something that is going to be lost on me or a lot of other Giants fans for a very long time. That quote tweet that he put out a few weeks ago on just a general statistical tweet. The Giants are a mess. And that stings. Like that loss really stings. Because if you looked at the schedule before the season and you asked me, Bryce, what is the most must-win game? What is the one game that you think the Giants will easily win? And I would have told you the New Orleans Saints. The Giants did their job in the first half. They put up 14 points. The end of the half was an absolute disaster. Somehow they go into the half down 16 to 14. But they still looked competent up until that point. The Giants scored for the last time with 13 minutes to go in the second quarter. They didn't score over 43 minutes of game time. It's unfathomable. Straight up. It's inexcusable. But this has become the norm with the New York Giants over the last 10 or so years. Giants didn't get to the quarterback as well as they'd like to. Spencer Rattler, with how well the Giants' front 7 played against Justin Herbert and the Chargers. Justin Herbert, who was top 3 in the NFL in terms of passing yards per game, they completely contained him in that offense. And then Spencer Rattler throws for 200-plus yards against the Giants. And they did get to the quarterback. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the defensive line was completely ineffective. That's not true. But you would have liked to see them bring down the quarterback more than they did. Why the hell is Deonte Banks playing? I know I just went straight into that, but there is nothing that angers me more than Deonte Banks. And the fact that Shane Bowen continues to insist on playing him even on third downs. Like, it's like, okay, put him in at first on first down. You want to give Paulson Adebo, who plays the majority of reps, you want to give him a rest. You want to give Drew Phillips a rest. I understand that. But to put him in on third down and on one of the biggest, most potentially impactful plays in the game, in which the Giants picked it off. I think it's Javon Holland who picked it off. Darius Alexander got to the quarterback, influenced the throw. Deonte Banks commits a pass interference down the field that nullifies what was a game-changing play. One of 10 different game-changing plays that if they went the Giants' way, they win the game. If the 9 other things continue to stay the same, to go the Saints' way, the Giants still win the game. Especially the Scotty fumble. But Deonte Banks being in on that play, being in on any play, is just unbelievable. It's insanity. Shane Bowen seems to have no idea what he's doing on defense. The Saints just put up 26 points on the Giants. With all that talent that they have on their defensive front, linebacker play hasn't been terrible. Darius Muasau made some nice plays. The Giants allowed the Saints to put up 26 points, which was their most points scored for the entire season. The 3 first games were division opponents. Good defenses, but I don't think any of their front sevens looked the way the Giants looked. So in the areas you expect the Giants to be the best, in the areas that you expect them to be the most impactful, they're not doing enough. They're not. And it's unfortunate that this is the state of the Giants, in which if they want to be successful, if they want to win games, their front seven needs to get to the quarterback. And the Giants are extremely adept at being able to get to the quarterback with just a 4-man rush. They rarely need to blitz because they could generate the pressure that the majority of NFL teams could not. And that is just with an average 4-man rush. Substituting guys in and out. Yeah, the Browns take out Myles Garrett. The Lions take out Aiden Hutchinson. They're screwed. They'd be hard-pressed to pressure the quarterback whatsoever. But the Giants could take out Kayvon Thibodeau. They could take out Abdul Carter. They could take out Brian Burns. And they will still always have 2 top 10 edge rushers in the NFL. Top 15 maybe. So the Giants have that working for them. But the Saints still put up 26 points. And I understand that 7 of those points came off a Giants turnover. And that with how the Giants were set up with these offensive drives, turning the ball over and allowing the Saints to go down the field, they scored on some of these drives. I get that. So you can't pin this game. I'm not even sitting here blaming the Giants defense for anything. They could have played better. Had they played better, they won the game. Probably. They probably do. But that wasn't the reason why they lost the game. Tyler Newman sucks. Straight up. Awful draft pick from Joe Shane. Showed some promise last year. This year, it's been a whole different ballgame. That ball that he got beat on deep by Shaheed, the 87-yard touchdown, was one of the worst blown coverages that we've seen all year from the Giants. Talk about inexcusable. The Giants lose one of the most winnable games that I've ever seen my football team lose. And it's hard to sit here and tell you anything else besides the fact there might be an issue with Jackson Dart's development. Considering the fact that his weapons are as bad as they are right now. When Jackson Dart was announced the starter about 2 weeks ago, his supporting cast was looked at as good as any other rookie quarterback has inherited in a very long time. And you were comfortable trotting him out there with a top 3 receiver in Malik Neighbors, an offensive line that has looked competent, a running back in Cam Scatterbo, who has emerged as a revelation for this team and one of the breakout stars amongst the rookies in the NFL this season. And in a quarter and a half, that completely changed. And the Giants have done nothing to address that. And it's only been a week. I understand a week and 2 days. But the Giants came out and said last week that they are going to look internally to fill that void at wide receiver. And we saw how that worked out this past week. We saw how bad Darius Slayton was as the first wide receiver, the first option on this Giants offense. And credit to Theo Johnson, credit to Daniel Bellinger, who got plenty more reps, especially as a receiving tight end, considering the issues that the Giants have in terms of the receivers. Credit to him. He showed exactly why we thought he'd be the tight end of the future after that playoff run in 2022. Theo Johnson with a good game as well, catching those 2 touchdowns. I said it on One Giant Step, my podcast with Sean Morash. Get that podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I talk about the Giants a lot more on there. I don't like to double up. I'd like to focus on the Yankees and the Knicks more on here. But you check that out. And I completely just lost my train of thought. Completely. I just think I'm so fed up with this. And I just, you know what? That's a sign. That's a sign. So I'm sorry for not being able to finish my point there. But check out One Giant Step. That's what I really wanted to tell you. The Giants are just a pathetic dumpster fire, and I don't see things improving at any point soon. I really don't. I was talking about Theo Johnson. There it is. It took me 30 seconds there. Theo Johnson, and I said this on One Giant Step, if he emerges as a solid option, reliable option at tight end, the makeup of this offense completely changes. You grow slightly more comfortable with having Darius Slayton as your wide receiver 1. And you'd think and you'd hope that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll are going to go out and trade for a wide receiver, go and get Isaiah Hodgins, maybe even bring in Odell Beckham Jr., who's washed. What other options do they have? It's like settling for the girl at the bar at the end of the night that you don't want to end up with. And it sounds good in the moment. The prospect of doing it sounds fine. You know, you're influenced by other things at stake. Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll are influenced by them potentially losing their jobs. And the fact that they gave Darius Slayton $12 million a year. So that's in the back of their minds. It's the same thing as bringing that girl back, waking up the next morning and being, why the F did I just do that? And I hope that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll woke up today and shared that feeling of, oh shit, we effed up and we have to change things or else we're screwed. So that's going to do it for the Giants talk. It's just so difficult being a fan of this team. Jackson Dart has looked good. He's been promising. I'm not going to sit here and tell you there's zero hope for this team. The Giants may have found their quarterback of the future. There are a few things that you'd like to see patched up. But then obviously on the flip side, you're like, all right, well, is he going to be able to patch those things up considering the fact that his receiving core is atrocious? His bottom 3 are maybe the worst in the NFL. So it remains to be seen. Keep an eye out for that. It's something to at least look forward to as a Giants fan. What else do we have? Not much. Tyrone Tracy returning from his injury and then being implemented into the passing game. Like, yeah, that's cool and all. That'd be a welcome sign to see him as the third down back instead of Devin Singletary. He was terrible. For whatever reason, the Giants drew up 3 straight plays for him. And after that, everything went to you-know-what. But I digress. I've talked enough about this team. It's god-awful organization and franchise that somehow managed to screw everything up. And speaking of teams and organizations and franchises that continue to screw things up, let's talk about the New York Yankees. And 2 utterly atrocious performances in a row from them over the last 2 days. We have seen something that is completely unsurprising. And that's the Yankees lineup faltering when it matters the most. And usually you get your production from your top guys. Giancarlo last year was Soto, never with Judge. And I'm going to get to him in a second because I believe and I think his stats are extremely deceiving. But you look at the lineup and you look at the stats. And there are a bunch of different metrics. The one I like to, you can go WRC plus and expected batting average and expected OBA, like all these different things that you could check out on Baseball Savant. I like to keep it simple, even though it's still an advanced metric, and that's just OPS. Like you look at this team, you look at all these players who stepped up during the regular season. Why I think the majority of Yankees fans finally had hope going into a playoffs, considering the fact that this looked to be the most balanced Yankees lineup that we've seen maybe since 2009. I don't believe that's hyperbole. Maybe 2017, there wasn't the firepower that you see on this team like you saw in 2009 or in 2017, and then going back to 2009, it's very similar. The issue is this team does not have playoff risers and guys who can hit in the biggest moments. Bellinger's OPS 660, which is obviously went up drastically after that Chris Paul cuts the lead to 42 home run at the end of the game yesterday. Paul Goldschmidt, been pretty good. 1,100 plus OPS. I do understand the majority of those at-bats have occurred against lefties, which obviously, he rakes against. I'd still like to see more of him, maybe even against righties as well, who he's sucked against. But he's a playoff riser, and that's what the Yankees need. Judge's OPS is over 1,000. I think that's completely misleading, considering what he has done in big spots. That swing off the Gausman splitter down and away is maybe the worst swing that I've seen Aaron Judge take since 2017. The year in which he had 52 home runs. He dominated, especially earlier on in the year, because no one knew how to pitch him. And once they realized that they could throw the breaking balls down and outside, down and away, like that worked. And it took him a couple years to figure out not to swing at those pitches. That pitch was never a strike. It wasn't like a slider that started off in the middle of the zone and then tailed off at the end. It was a splitter that, not for 1 second, was in the zone. Aaron Judge gets a hit there, changes the game. The Yankees end up scoring 1 run out of that, and they still lose the game big time. It's a completely different game if Aaron Judge comes up with the hit there. And the series is 1-1 going back to New York. Obviously, a lot of things had to go right at the end, and it's no guarantee they still win the game, but either way, the entire outlook of that game and this series for the Yankees changes if Aaron Judge shows up in the most important moments. And again, his OPS is over 1,000. Low leverage Aaron Judge, there's no one better in MLB history. In big moments, the guy consistently underwhelms. And it's one of the most interesting tales, interesting situations in all the sports. You can't really think of a good comparison in different sports and baseball, even looking at golfers. Guys who are considered all-time talents in the regular season, but in the postseason, everything changes. And that is who Aaron Judge will be defined as unless he starts to hit for more power. He's not hit a home run throughout these playoffs. And if he starts to come up in big moments. And let's keep going down this list. McMahon, 600 OPS. That's not far off from what he was with the Yankees with 680 OPS. It is what it is. He's a brick wall at third base. That's why you traded for him. You didn't expect him to improve his hitting magically. That was never going to happen. You played for the Rockies. So, half of his games were being played at high altitude, and that obviously impacts slugging and whatnot. The biggest surprise of this postseason is Giancarlo Stanton with the 440 OPS. It's been put out there that he might be hurt, might be playing through an injury, but that's just inexcusable. And at the end of the day, if the Yankees lose this series tomorrow, the next day, or in Game 5, Giancarlo Stanton deserves criticism. Don't get me wrong. But if everyone else doesn't produce as well, Giancarlo Stanton deserves a lot less blame than those guys. Because Giancarlo has showed up when it has mattered the most. Was the ALCS MVP of last year. Completely dominant. It's night and day between last year and this year for Giancarlo, though. He looks like a deer in headlights. Can't catch up to the fastball. Whiffing on splitters and changeups. Has not been able to read breaking balls. Just a month ago, I was very excited about the prospect of Giancarlo Stanton back in the playoffs. And I said going into Game 3 against Boston, if Giancarlo has a good game, you win the series. I believe that was the game in which Giancarlo hit the double. He thought it was gone. Somehow stretches it into a double, even though he pimped it. A la Josh Donaldson. But at least he wasn't thrown out at second like Josh Donaldson was a million times. Giancarlo's got to pick it up. And it's kind of unfair that the Yankees have entrusted him so much in the playoffs when no one else has performed. So this isn't completely on him. But to his standards, to what we all expect of him, he's been an absolute zero. And the biggest disappointment in these playoffs. And you keep going down this list. Trent Grisham, 427 OPS. I don't think anyone expected him to continue to be an over 800 OPS, but even having a 650 or 700 OPS, and this is a potentially different series, potentially different playoffs. Austin Wells, 481 OPS. I don't think that that's surprising to anyone. Volpe, 731. Like, the guy performs in the playoffs. Say what you want about him in the regular season. He's come up big in big moments. I don't think you could say the same for anyone else on this team. He comes up in big moments. He understands the spotlight. He understands what it means to play in these big moments. He grew up a Yankee fan, and he has been able to meet the moment. Over 800 OPS in his playoff career. And I understand that's only 2 seasons, but still, it's not a small sample size. They went to the World Series last year, and they played now in 5 games in the postseason, 731. It was better going to this last game. Again, there were no high leverage spots for him anyway, where he thrives the most in the playoffs. But I digress. Another huge disappointment has been Jazz Chisholm. He did come up big against the Red Sox, but does he have 1 hit against the Blue Jays? Do any of these guys, have any of them done anything in big spots in the series against the Blue Jays? No, they have not. And there is the argument, not the argument, there's no argument here, but there is the far-fetched conspiracy theory, I guess you could say, of how the hell are the Blue Jays this good at home? Being 54-27 on pace for 108 wins at home. That's just absurd. And they're under 500. Being a team that was 25, 30 games over 500 on their overall record, they're that much better at home. I'm not saying it. But it's interesting. That's all I'll say. And I'm not trying to make excuses. There's no one who is as hard on this Yankees team as I am. No one. My friends hate me for it. They think I'm negative. They think I'm a pessimist. But look who's been right the majority of the time. This guy. So the Yankees take game 3, or hopefully they take game 3, but the series shifts back to Yankee Stadium. And you hope that this team has what the 2017 Yankees had, where they looked dead up until the 7th inning of game 3, which they were down 0-2. Greg Bird hits a lefty home run against one of the best relievers in MLB at the time, Andrew Miller. And then the Yankees went on to win 3 straight and advanced the ALCS. Do I think that this team has the resolve, has the fight, the heart to do what that team did? Absolutely not. It was a ragtag bunch of guys who had no expectations going into the season. People thought that this was going to be a rebuilding year for the Yankees. They exceeded all those expectations and then some. Advanced the ALCS, should have advanced the World Series, lost to a cheating Astros team that should not have won that series. Hopefully this team has the juice that team did. I can't see that. I can't see this happening. I can't see a historic comeback happening if all these guys continue to not show up in the biggest moments. The Yankees could very well win these next 2 games by a large margin and then go back to Rogers Center and lose big again. The pitching has been atrocious. Luke Weaver, I cannot understand. I can. I watch him, and you could see that he's quick through his progressions. He doesn't have the changeup. His fastball doesn't have nearly as much movement. He can't pinpoint it like he was able to last year, in which he was absolute nails. He's been terrible, and he's seen way too much time on the mound. And the Yankees just don't have many guys out of the pen they could trust. And that is not usually the case with the Yankees. You look at 2017, the year in which they did what they did, won 3 straight to advance the ALCS. The bullpen was amazing. Chad Green was huge, eating up multiple innings. Canely was solid. They had Robertson on that team, I believe. That team's a far cry from this team. And it's funny because this team is a significantly more talent. Significantly. And I said, I'm like, if the Yankees wanted a chance to win this series, after what we saw in game 1, the starting pitching was going to need to be flawless. And you saw Max Fried in game 2 regress back to the mean, which is where he has been throughout his last, 8 postseason starts. He had a really good game against the Red Sox in a must-win game. I guess they lost. Whatever. He had a good performance in that series against the Red Sox. But he was a complete dud yesterday. What do you got, Carlos? What do you got, Carlos Rodon? Vladdy is like 9 for 13 against Rodon with like 4 home runs, and he's been otherworldly in these playoffs. So it remains to be seen. Obviously, I want the season to continue, but there are a lot of things the Yankees are going to need to address if they lose. When they lose. Game 3 tomorrow. I guess I'm looking forward to it. I don't know. But save us, Knicks, please. We have now 17 days until the next season, and hopefully all these teams have given, they've sucked so the Knicks can have better luck. Everyone knows that's my number 1 team. So if all these teams sucked and the Knicks won a championship, terrific. So be it. Amazing. That would be the best day of my life. All right, enough with this. I'm glad that I was able to get my thoughts in on both these teams. I know it's like, kind of a a down live stream, and how could it not be? I'm sure there are plenty of other people out there who shared the sentiment, who shared the disappointment, the frustration, and the anger that I felt yesterday. And I felt like I, unpacked it all very well. So if you missed any of this, scroll back after I'm done here. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and I'll talk to you all very soon. Next season, coming back, baby. Let's go. See ya.